Earlier this year, it was announced that Megamind was finally going to be getting a follow-up after years of fans begging for a sequel. Although it won't be a movie, we're certainly still looking forward to watching Megamind's Guide to Defending Your City on Peacock. But before we meet any new characters from Metro City, we thought it was about time to look at the original Megamind cast and see where they fall on the morality spectrum. I'm Keefe Nossi with Wicked Binge, and this is Megamind Good to Evil. As always, we're going to start with the heroic and the pure-hearted before working our way down to the not-so-good and the downright terrible. These characters are the good. Earning the gold medal of good, we have Megamind's parents. Although incredibly minor characters, we felt that they deserved a mention for their noble sacrifice. Taking a page right out of Jor-El and Laura's book, Megamind's parents saved his life by putting him in a rocket ship and sending him to Earth when their planet began to get sucked into a black hole. Even if we don't know much about anything else they did, nor who they were as people, this is already enough to get these two a high ranking, as they made sure their baby would be safe instead of trying to escape the dying planet themselves. They were also the ones to give Megamind his minion so he wouldn't be alone and would be protected, as well as a pacifier that baby Megamind later used to power the inventions he made as a child. For the brief time that we saw them, Megamind's parents were pretty great ones and more than deserve this top spot. For our silver medal of good, we're giving it to Metro City's star reporter, Roxanne Ricci. In the game of superhero versus supervillain, Roxanne was the no-nonsense damsel in distress who wasn't intimidated at all by Megamind's antics. But while she has no superpowers, we can still safely say that Roxanne is probably the most good out of all of our main characters. After Metro Man's so-called death, Roxanne takes it upon herself to try and stop whatever Megamind's new plans are, working alongside her new friend Bernard, aka Megamind in disguise. We see just how determined and brave she can be fighting Megamind in order to try and protect Bernard and not backing down just because Megamind is a supervillain. We also see just how friendly, sweet, and supportive Roxanne can be during her and Megamind's dates. She literally encourages Megamind to be a better person without even realizing it. That's pretty impressive and just speaks volumes about her own goodness. After all the truths are revealed, both Megamind's and Metro Man's, Roxanne is the only one willing to stand up to Hal, even when all hope seems lost. She encourages Megamind to save the day, saying that she believes in him, and even helps out when she can during the final battle, despite, again, not having superpowers.
The city needs you.
Although she needs saving more than a few times, Roxanne's character and personality shine through as truly genuine examples of goodness. Really, the only thing we could maybe take off points for is her reacting with violence when she found out that Metro Man had faked his own death. But it's not as though she could actually hurt him given his invulnerability, and we can't blame her for reacting that way, really. Moving on to our bronze medal of good, we have another minor character, the Warden. As his title implies, he's the warden of the Metro City prison, making sure that all of the city's dangerous criminals stay locked up. Definitely a career that lands on the side of good for the most part. While we question the decision of keeping a baby and later a small child in prison, we could also argue that the warden was protecting young Megamind in a way. After all, one look at another DreamWorks film, Monsters vs. Aliens, can give you an idea of what could have happened to Megamind had he landed somewhere the government could find him instead of in the prison. Additionally, while the warden is often annoyed with Megamind and even taunts him a bit at the beginning of the film, saying that he'll always be a villain, we do see a bit of the warden's softer side.
You're a villain, and you'll always be a villain. You'll never change.
He gave Megamind a chance at bettering himself as a child when he allowed Megamind to go to school, and right before the film's climax, he wished both Megamind and Minion luck in their battle with Titan. Though he can be a bit antagonistic at times, the warden really isn't that bad of a guy. Finishing off the good tier, we have the one and only Metro Man. If you've seen the film, you know exactly why Metro Man is this far down, despite being an actual superhero. Let's get the good out of the way first. Yes, for years Metro Man protected the city and saved people from Megamind. Though we know that Megamind likely never really wanted to actually hurt anyone nor destroy the city, Metro Man was still doing an act of good by fighting him. Metro Man is also a decent guy in general, if a touch arrogant. Though calling someone a random citizen is maybe a bit rude, he did still return that one guy's affection when he said that he loved him.
And I love you, random citizen.
We also see that Metro Man seems to care a lot for both Roxanne and Megamind, seeing them both as friends and encouraging the latter to step up and be a force for good. But that leads us into the not so great things about Metro Man, namely that he was willing to fake his own death when he decided that he was done being a hero. Even if he knew that Megamind wasn't nearly as evil as he claimed to be, it was still a pretty reckless thing to do. Not to mention, a bit traumatizing for Roxanne, who saw what she thought was his skeleton. Although we can't blame Metro Man for wanting to pursue something that made him happy, the way he went about it was still selfish and a bit callous. We also can't forget how bratty he was as a kid and how much trouble he caused Megamind. Though we're thankful that he was able to grow out of all that, we can't say whether or not Metro Man made the right choice, but we can say that for the most part, his good qualities outweigh his bad, allowing him to just barely make it into this tier. We're now moving on to characters that fall somewhere in between good and evil. This is the gray area. Starting off the gray area, we have Minion. This little fish is Megamind's faithful servant and best friend, sticking by his side throughout most of the film. Although he's often encouraging and enabling Megamind's evil behavior and even helps him steal and cause property damage during their crazy train montage, it's evident just how much Minion's support and care mean to Megamind, who would have been completely alone otherwise. His support extends to helping Megamind with his plans and inventions, designing and sewing Megamind's extravagant wardrobe, and kidnapping people. That last one is pretty awful, admittedly, but again, it's all part of their little game and not something that's super harmful, at least not in this context. Minion also does his best to look out for Megamind, not wanting to see him get his feelings hurt after he learns that Megamind has been pretending to be Bernard. He's even willing to step out of line whenever Megamind comes up with a truly awful plan, and again, he speaks his mind because he doesn't want his boss to get hurt. Although the two of them do decide to part ways after their fight, Minion still decides to help Megamind, though only after Megamind apologizes, and even risks his own life for Roxanne Ricci, saving her when Hal throws a building at them. Honestly, if it weren't for Minion being such an enabler for Megamind's evil behavior, he would have easily made it into the good tier. Up next, we have the very boring Bernard. Being the last of our minor characters, Bernard works at the Metro Man Museum and is an expert in all things Megamind. For the short time that we see him, he's pretty apathetic and kind of rude. He tells Roxanne that he's not allowed to insult museum guests directly, and gets annoyed when she asks to spend more time in the museum. A few minutes later, he insults Megamind when he thinks he's wearing what he calls a cheap costume. Though we don't see him again until the ending credits, this brief interaction with Bernard doesn't exactly paint a great picture of the guy. He's not an outright jerk, thankfully, but we can't really put him on the level of other human characters like Roxanne or the Warden either, so he manages to land right in the middle of our list. We finally arrived at the film's titular character, Megamind. Although he eventually becomes the film's newest hero, there's still quite a lot of bad to this not-so-bad guy. While he doesn't aim to actually hurt or kill anyone, Megamind can be pretty destructive when he wants to be. This can include damaging priceless art, doing graffiti, and even using fire trucks as darts. We also can't forget just how much lying Megamind does in the movie, as well as how self-centered he can be. For as awful as Hal is, he didn't deserve to get emotionally manipulated by his so-called space dad, nor did Roxanne deserve to be tricked. Megamind even, at one point, tells Minion that he doesn't need him anymore. He doesn't mean this, of course, but it's still harsh. Finally, though the initial shot with the powers was an accident, Megamind still selfishly uses Hal for his own gain, not really giving much mind to the consequences, nor even taking the time to think about what could happen if his plans are to go wrong. But while a lot of Megamind's actions are pretty awful, it's his character and moral code where you start to see his truly good side. Megamind does what he can to try and make Roxanne happy, and in turn starts to become a better person. When she rejects him, Megamind respects her decision, even when it breaks his heart, and only tries to talk with her again when it's literally life or death. Though he doesn't believe that he can be a hero, he still takes responsibility for his mistakes and puts himself in harm's way as he tries to save the day, all so he can protect Roxanne and stop Hal once and for all. Seeing Megamind turn himself around was honestly a great arc, and while it isn't quite enough to push him into the good tier, we're sure he'll do a lot more good in his new series. For now though, he manages to stay out of the bad at least. Finishing off the gray tier, we had to give a brief mention to the Brainbots. These little guys are Megamind's robots. With how they act, however, they're honestly more like pets. This can include being pretty destructive and bitey, unfortunately. They are programmed to capture enemies and protect Megamind, but they also have a playful side. It's hard to know where their programming ends and their personality begins, hence why we had to give them sort of a neutral rating. But given that they helped Megamind with this big presentation display in the film's climax, we felt that they deserved a few bonus points. Finally, we've arrived at the wicked and truly villainous, where we find only one character. By default, the gold medal of evil goes to Hal Stewart, aka Titan. Oh boy. Even before he got superpowers, there was just something off about this guy, ranging from subtle to explicit. Hal is pretty creepy towards Roxanne throughout the first act of the film. What's worse is because he's so blinded by his attraction to her, he doesn't really care much about her actual feelings. Even when Roxanne is in mourning after Metro Man's supposed death, Hal still only cares about getting to hang out with her. Things just get worse once he starts to become Titan, from using his supervision to spy on Roxanne as she works, to putting her in danger because he believes that saving her will win her over. Hal is just completely awful. He goes from having a bit of a creepy crush to feeling like he's entitled to her affections. When he's finally rejected, Hal doesn't even hesitate to go full villain. He happily steals things because he can and tries to team up with Megamind, believing that they could rule the city together. Of course, once he learns the truth, Hal begins going on a total rampage, not really caring who he puts in danger nor who he hurts, culminating in him trying to kill both Roxanne and Megamind. Though Hal might have not started out as too bad of a guy, the speed at which he was able to go from creep to a total supervillain just speaks volumes about him as a person. For all these reasons, Hal, without a doubt, deserves the gold medal of evil. And that's our list, but before we go, we've got some sinner medals to give out. We're going to give the Darwin medal to Hal. No real surprise here, the guy was pretty easy to trick and has a ton of dumb moments throughout the film. He even mixes up Titan and Titan, which is just wow. We're also giving Hal the Wrath Medal. Despite having the power to do whatever he wants, Hal chooses to use his powers for revenge and is completely willing to kill Megamind just because he kissed Roxanne. Speaking of kisses, Megamind is earning the Lust Medal. Though Megamind was never a villain at heart, most of his desire to be a better person is due to his crush on Roxanne, and he was willing to lie and continuously disguise himself to keep being with her. A lot of work just to date someone. We also just had to give Megamind the Pride Medal. Even with all of Minion's warnings or Roxanne's comments, it still ends up taking a lot for Megamind to admit that he was wrong. We also just can't ignore how much peacocking the guy does when it comes to his weapons and wardrobe. Finally, the Sloth Medal's gotta go to Metro Man. Again, we can't blame this hero for wanting to seek out his own happiness, but by faking his own death just to avoid the awkward "I quit being a hero" announcement, he did it in the laziest way possible. But let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the moralities of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.